Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to Ranking Radiance 12 to 1. Now, Radiance are obviously a brand new label from last year, run by Fran Simeone, who used to work for Arrow. And the first 12 releases are out, or the first 12 spine numbers are out. I have decided I'm not going to be complete, even though I have the first 12, and I'll be ordering the Franco Nero set, or have ordered the Franco Nero set, and the Italian comedy set, and the other Italian film. But, you know, apart from that, I'm not going to be complete. They have an interesting mix in the first 12. Again, these are kind of neglected films, specially curated films, but with some kind of themes running through them. And certainly it's always fun to support a new label, especially one that makes such interesting releases. Again, perhaps you're not going to like everything, but again, what label do you like everything? Apart from Indicator, of course, not sponsored by Indicator or Radiance. So this is our ranking of 12 to 1. There's a couple of these films I've seen multiple times, but for the most part it's just on first viewing. So you have to take these rankings with a pinch of salt, because again, I don't really believe you can make, you know, that much of a judgment on one viewing. You do have to watch a film a couple of times. I do like the design of the Radiance releases as far as the cases they use. The little strip of kind of introductory paper, normally I would kind of put away because it does cover the front image and the back image, but for some reason I kind of like the way Radiance have done it, so for the time being I'm keeping them actually in the box. So I'm going to do a 12 to 1, just a brief synopsis of the films if I haven't done a random review on them. I think I've only maybe done a couple, but I have talked about one of the other films in a random review by another release of the film. So without further rambling by me, let's talk about number 12. And for me, it's Filler Up with Super. Again, this is the introductory card, which kind of tells you a little bit about the film, gives you the extras, and on the back gives you more detail with the extras and the running time and the details. And you do get a nice booklet as well. I kind of like the paper in the booklet as well. It's a little bit different from other people's booklets. This is from France. It's from 1976, and it's a road movie, which I usually enjoy. But this one I really found hard to get into. It's about 4 guys who don't really like each other. 2 of them are friends, but they don't really like each other, and then they kind of meet up with 2 other guys who don't really like each other and don't really like them, and they travel across a very kind of desolate and 70s France. Again, for me, it's my least favourite release by a long distance. Again, I may watch it again, but I don't think I'll be in any hurry to watch it again. So that's number 12, Filler Up with Super. From 11 to 1, these are all films that I enjoyed. But number 11 is Miami Blues with Alec Baldwin, Fred Ward, and Jennifer Jason Leigh. I did see this when it came out on home video. And again, I like this film, but Alec Baldwin for me is too much of a nasty character. Again, I don't mind nasty characters if there's something about them, but I just feel that Alec Baldwin is a little bit too nasty in this for my tastes, and if it wasn't for Fred Ward, I wouldn't really watch this too often, because it's really Fred Ward's film as much as Alec Baldwin thinks it's his film, but don't tell him it's really Fred Ward's film, and Jennifer Jason Leigh's film. And Fred Ward does have one of the best last lines in cinema history. So that's Miami Blues. I will say, with all these Radiance releases, they've done an excellent job on extras. There's just a ton of extras on all the releases. So that's number 11. Number 10 is She Dies Tomorrow. This is a modern film from 2020, directed by Amy Seimetz, written and directed by Amy Seimetz, who you might not recognise her name, but she's an actor, so if you see her face, you'll know who I'm talking about. This is an interesting little film, a slow burn, and again, really from 10 to 1, these are the films that I did like a lot. So this is down at number 10. I still really like this. It's a bit of a slow burn, but again, I like the kind of mystery of it. At times it's perhaps kind of reaching for profundity that it perhaps doesn't quite manage to get, but it's a nice idea. The main character is a recovering alcoholic, and she's convinced that she's going to die tomorrow. Her friend comes over and she tells her that, and then her friend goes home, and then she starts to have the feeling that she's going to die tomorrow. She goes to her brother's wife's birthday party in her pyjamas because she's obviously a little bit perturbed, and she tells them she's going to die tomorrow, and then it kind of spreads and everybody thinks they're going to die tomorrow. It's a really nice idea, about what would you do if you thought you were going to die tomorrow. Would it change anything? I'm not going to go too much detail into it, but it's a really nice little film, and again, I think it might be destined for cult status. It's not perfect, but it's certainly, again, it goes along with pretty much all these films. Very interesting. Radiance to me are perhaps a little bit like Anti-Worlds, but I think better, a little bit more consistent. Obviously it's just 12 titles in. I think Anti-Worlds only has about 8 or something like that. But that kind of offbeat, kind of subject matter and offbeat kind of film. So at number 9 is Welcome to the Dollhouse by Todd Solondz, from 1995. Again, I think I saw this when it came out in home video. Was video still around in 95? I'm not actually quite sure, I can't remember. This is a wonderful coming of age, but again, it's somewhat offbeat, as most of Solond's work is. I read somewhere that there's a rumour that Happiness has come to Criterion. I don't know whether that's a true rumour or whether it's just a rumour. But this is a wonderful coming of age that again is a little bit offbeat and doesn't do the predictable thing of making the the protagonist just amazingly likeable. I can't even keep up. Number 8. This might be a little bit of a surprise. It's Yakuza Graveyard from 1976 by Kenji Fukasaku. Obviously famous for Battles Without Honor and Humanity. Maybe I've been watching too many Yakuza films recently, as if that's a thing. How could you possibly watch too many Yakuza films? But I thought this was a good film. Maybe it was my expectations, but I was expecting a lot more. And very much like Miami Blues, I think the lead character, unfortunately for me at least, just borders too much on just being a not very nice human being. So it was difficult for me to engage with him. But again, you've still got that kinetic, dynamic madness of Fukasaku's camera and his action sequences. This is one of the releases that has nice cards as well as the booklet. So that's Yakuza Graveyard. Again, I'll certainly be checking this one out again, because it is Yakuza and it's Fukasaku. That's Yakuza Graveyard. Number 7. It shouldn't be that difficult to count to 12 in reverse. Number 7 is The Sunday Woman by Luigi Comencini from 1975. This is an Italian film. So again, you can see different nationalities in the first 12 Radiance titles. This is a whodunit with Marcello Mastroianni, Jean-Louis Trintignant and Jacqueline Bisset. And this is somewhat odd. There's a score by Ennio Morricone. And this is about Bisset, who's the wife of an industrialist, and her friend, or gay friend played by Trintignant, who is in the business world himself, and they become suspects in a murder of an architect, because Bisset wrote a letter to Trintignant saying, "Oh, let's get rid of him." Again, I'm not going to go too much into plot. Mastroianni is the police inspector, so it's very much a police procedural, but it's not really. The investigation's not that important. It's more about class, as quite a lot of Italian films actually are. It's of that period. It's more about the North and South divide, which most Italian films of that period are about as well. It's perhaps not as good as it really should be, when you consider who's involved. It does kind of meander about. There is, again, because the plot is not necessarily the most important thing, but it is a pleasure all the same. That might be a little bit contradictory, but it's actually true. Even though it does meander about a little bit, it's still, there's lots to be enjoyed in The Sunday Woman. Number 6. It's Red Sun from 1970. This is a wonderful little film from Germany. Again, another different nationality. And this is about 4 women who have kind of banded together. They live in this apartment, who have an interesting way of dealing with men. And this drifter who comes in, who used to be the boyfriend of one of the women called Peggy, and he kind of drifts in and out the picture. He's a bit of a bum, really, and while these women are doing what they're doing with their men, he kind of finds out more and more about what they're doing. I'm deliberately being as oblique as possible about the plot because I don't want to give anything away, but it's a real treat. Or Rote Sonne, as it is in German. It's just a lovely little film. It's kind of poetic. The apartment they live in, does remind you a little bit of Clockwork Orange as far as those bright colours, even though this was 1970. There's a quote on the front, or Wim Wenders compares it to a comic strip. The people in the film, they do act in a very, it's not quite Herzog Heart of Glass hypnosis, but they do act in a very kind of odd, strange way. There's something very poetic about the film, and again, it's just this juxtaposition of these beautiful women and how they deal with the men who perhaps don't treat them the way they should be treated. It's a beautiful little film, but again, I don't want to give too much away. At number 5, Truffaut's The Bride Wore Black, starring Jean Moreau. This is from 1968, obviously French. That's some nice artwork in the back. And again, this one's got some art cards as well. This is about a woman's revenge after her husband is shot dead on their wedding day. I'm sure Tarantino never saw this. And Jean Moreau, with that impassive face, as a figure of revenge. It does take some surprising turns, and the ending may make you chuckle or infuriate you. Again, it's a lovely little film, based on a book by Cornell Woolrich, who has had quite a lot of his books filmed. Yeah, it's just a lovely little film with Moreau, again, not emoting a lot, but again, just that impassive face while she gets revenge on these men. It's a lot of fun. Number 4 might be lower in a lot of people's rankings if they're doing that, but this is from France, and this is A Woman Kills. This is kind of, it's an odd film, but I think over the years we'll come to know it as a Radiance kind of film, the same way some of us kind of know what an indicator film means. This is part kind of experimental, part nouvelle vague, part police procedural about a serial killer, and there's lots of lovely film techniques mixed up and mashed up. It's only 69 minutes long. I think if it was like 100 minutes long, it might give you a headache. But it's just a fascinating little film, believed lost for years. It's by Jean-Denis Bonon. It's got lots of his short films on it, so it's another wonderful release with wonderful supplements. So certainly not for everybody, but if you're that way inclined, it is a wonderful little treat. Number 3 is one of the ones I did do a recent random review of, and that's Bo Widerberg's The Man on the Roof, and this comes from Sweden. Again, you can go see my random review, because I don't like to give too much of the plot away. I think yesterday, Criterion actually announced that they're going to do that's another box set, but certainly an edition with, I think, 4 Widerberg's films. I don't know whether Criterion was prompted by Radiance to do that, I don't know, or whether it started a bidding war for Widerberg's work. But this is just a wonderful police procedural with a kind of gritty, realistic view. It has some twists and surprises, and it's just wonderful about a police detective who gets murdered and then the following investigation. So that's a corking little Swedish film from 1976. Number 2 is one of the first releases. It's funny because number 1 and number 2 are the actual two first releases. This is from 1968, and this is Big Time Gambling Boss. I deliberately didn't do a random review of this because I think everybody did a random review of this because it's just so good. You'll recognise that gentleman from Lone Wolf and Cub, Baby Cart series. This is from Kosaku Yamashita, and this is just a wonderful period, or not a period, but a Yakuza film from the 60s. Just classy, but just beautifully shot. A nice story, and just quite wonderful. There's not really too much to say about it. It's just an absolutely fantastic little film, and certainly one of the top Radiance titles so far, which leaves number one, and it's to nobody's surprise that I would say this is my favourite. So happy that this got a release. It was kind of the reason. Well, I was always going to look into Radiance just because Simeone was involved with a lot of the Japanese releases from Arrow. But it's Ilo Petry's The Working Class Goes to Heaven, or Lulu the Tool from 1971, starring Gian-Maria Volonté. So happy that when Radiance announced this, it was like, okay, Radiance are serious, because there's just so much Italian cinema that needs a better release. So lots more Petry Radiance, please, if anybody's listening. Petriangeli, Monicelli, Rossi, please do. I know obviously there's the Italian comedy box set coming, which I've pre-ordered, and the Franco Nero, which I've pre-ordered, as I said. But this is just a wonderful film. Is it Petry's best? Probably not, but it's there or thereabouts. It's a really noisy, abrasive, confrontational film about Volonté, who works in a factory. It's the old north-south divide again. And he is the best of the best. He teaches people how to use the machines properly. You know, it's piecework and he's the master at it. But then he has an accident, and then he kind of sees how he is treated by the owners. There's lots of shouting in it. It's a very shouty film between the union leaders and the student leaders and the workers. Morricone's score is almost avant-garde. There's lots of banging and clanking, and it's a very noisy film. It is in your face, but it's also kind of wonderful, and it's driven by a tour de force performance by Volonté, who's also in Investigation of a Citizen Above Suspicion by Petry, but gives a completely different performance here. It's just a fantastic film, but I am biased. Again, wonderful booklet, and top class Volonté, Petry and Morricone. So that's my 12-1 ranking of Radiance titles so far. I mean, for me, there's only one clunker out of 12, which is pretty good. But again, that's just my taste. I'm sure everybody's 12 rankings would be completely different. But that's the joy of cinema, and certainly the joy that looks like a label like Radiance. Long may it continue. So thanks very much for watching. Please let me know what your favourite Radiance release is so far, and hopefully you'll join me in the future, where who knows, we maybe discuss more Radiance titles. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.